All right, hi everyone. My name is Askin, and 2 years ago, I was a master's student at the University of Oxford during the start of the pandemic, where I also completed my thesis together with the Maldives Whale Shark Research Program. So today I'll be sharing a few small insights from my thesis with you. So I'll be running you guys through a social ecological systems assessment of anthropogenic pressure on whale sharks in South Ari Atoll, which I'll be referring to as SAMPA during this presentation. As many of you know, SAMPA is a globally significant whale shark tourism hotspot, and is also home to one of the globally most unique whale shark aggregations in the world. Now, whale sharks are an endangered species that is continuing to decline in population numbers. So understanding how humans are impacting them across the world, and especially at tourist sites, is incredibly important, which is why we wanted to have a look at how human activities are impacting whale sharks, but also if there are any other feedback loops that are showing how the presence of whale sharks is actually impacting human activities. So I come from interdisciplinary conservation science, which is why in this research, the approach is that the marine system also includes people, and we'll be looking at the ecosystem of the whale shark inclusive of people in this piece of research. I used a hybridized methodology that brought together 3 different disciplines: shark ecology, the most obvious one, but also 2 lesser known ones called animal geography and political ecology, which look at the more social side of sharks and the more human side of sharks. So one specifically looks at how people perceive animals and how this impacts how we engage with this animal and protect it. And political ecology specifically looks at the intersection of local livelihoods and the environment and wildlife. Because we only have 15 minutes, I will mostly be focusing on the shark ecology element today, but I will give you a few smaller insights from the other 2 disciplines from this thesis. So study area is SAMPA, South Ari Atoll, and most of my research has been based on the data gathered by the Maldives Whale Shark Research Program. And when I say data, I mean specifically encounter data on whale sharks gathered by following along the transect lane along SAMPA all day during most of the whale sharks field season. My research questions were reflecting the methodology. So I had a social research question, an ecological research question, and one that brings together both. And today I'll be focusing specifically on the ecological one, which is how anthropogenic activities, specifically tourism for today, have impacted the presence and the behavior of whale sharks and what this means for shark conservation. And I will be giving you a few small snippets on the insights I've gained on how whale shark conservation is linked to local livelihoods in SAMPA based on the previous research question. It all sounds a bit stacked, but trust me, it will make sense as we go through it. So the methodology was also interdisciplinary. My primary research method was analysis of encounter data because this was a COVID thesis. I was working remotely and couldn't make it into the field in the Maldives. So I analyzed data from 2011 to 2019 that was gathered in the Maldives Whale Shark Research Program database, and that included over 5,000 data points from encounters with whale sharks, including vessel presence, tourist presence, behavior of the sharks, and location of sightings and encounters. Secondly, I conducted 15 interviews virtually. This was meant to be 50 interviews in the field, but COVID got in the way. And lastly, I also conducted a driver pressure state impact response model, and also some literature review to bring together the social science element of things. I will be focusing on the encounter data primarily today because we don't have so much time. So looking at the encounter data, a very concerning trend became evident very quickly, and that was the rapid decline in encounters with whale sharks, which led us to be a little bit worried about what's happening to these whale sharks, given that they've almost halved. Secondly, we were looking at the number of contributors that's gone up. So we see really in this graph that encounters with the whale sharks are declining, but the number of contributors, so the amount of search effort, the presence in the area of SAMPA submitting encounters is increasing. So if we have more people looking out for whale sharks, technically we should be having more encounters, but that was not the case. So overall, from the peak number of encounters to the lowest, the encounters with whale sharks have declined by 52%, so half. We went from having 652 encounters with whale sharks in SAMPA in 2015 to 2019 with only 310 total encounters. And evasive behavior has also increased. So Initially, we had only 11.9% of the whale sharks in 2013 displaying evasive behavior. And in 2019, that was over 60% of the whale sharks displaying evasive behavior. And when we say evasive, we mean reduced time at the surface, whale sharks swimming away and rapidly diving down when people are entering the water or boats are approaching. Now, the question here is search efforts going up. We have more people in the water, more people reporting encounters. We have more contributors, but we're losing the whale sharks and losing the number of encounters. And the big question here was, what's happening to the whale sharks? Where are they going? And that's where the power of photo ID came in. So the same graph, but now I've overlaid for you the number of whale shark individuals with the blue line at the bottom. So you can see that throughout this time, the number of whale shark individuals is staying quite consistent. So we're having the same number of whale sharks still cruising around Sampa. They're just showing up significantly less on the surface. We're not losing the whale shark individuals. They're just not showing up, and we don't really know why. Well, we do. We'll get there in a second. So looking back at the encounter data and the photo ID data, we still have the same number of whale sharks present within Sampa, but it's really the loss of encounters that's striking. And here are a few explanations why. So tourism pressure is one of the more obvious variables to analyze that could potentially explain why the whale sharks are spending less time at the surface and less time in Sampa. This is what encounters should ideally be looking like with the whale sharks. This is the reality of most encounters with whale sharks in Sampa. Over time, the number of people in the water present at one whale shark encounter has increased and almost doubled. We now have 34 people in the water at one encounter with one whale shark, and on average, about 7 boats crowding one whale shark. Another big factor here is the injuries. Not just manta rays, but also whale sharks and all other Mega-fauna in the Maldives are still subject to a lot of vessel strikes, including lacerations all the way to amputations. And most of these injuries are unfortunately caused by speeding tourist operators trying to get there quickly to show the whale shark to their client. The number of injured individuals has also gone up, and along with it, the number of evasive encounters. And when I put this into the GLLM, it became quite evident that there's a strong statistical correlation between these two. But we'll get to one of the limitations of this later. Now, a few different perspectives. I wanted to highlight a little bit the social science side of the research here, because how we regard animals materializes in practice and affects how biodiversity is protected and governed. And one animal, the whale shark, has different valuations across different societal groups. Interviewing fishermen, researchers, tourists, and operators, these 4 themes stood out very clearly. For many people, the whale shark is in fact still regarded as a past resource that, back in the day, before the ban on shark fishing, was used for liver oil extraction. And that resource thinking has shifted into today, where the whale shark is still regarded as a resource, but primarily a commodity. And here it's really a drive of the wildlife tourism industry in Sampa. And for fishermen, they've indicated that they see the whale shark sometimes as a large source of competition from interaction with fishing vessels, but also because of tourism. And then very different from these ways of thinking are obviously the researchers who see the whale shark as an object of study, as a species that we need to enhance knowledge about. And there are a few quotes that stood out a lot in the interviews conducted that really highlight this resource thinking. The Duveri Masvaring, the Fishing Association, multiple members responded to me by email, which is fantastic. But many of them indicated that they feel fishermen don't gain anything in return for sharks being alive for the tourism industry. And that's something that was quite unexpected to still hear. And again, the resource thinking also translates back to the tourism operators, where many have indicated that they'd like to be following code of conducts, but really it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, they have the pressure to show the guests they're a whale shark. So it becomes quite evident that one of the big conservation challenges in Sampa that explains this increased pressure is this resource thinking. It's the way that several members of the community are feeling that the whale shark is a resource they need to have access to generate income. And without taking this into consideration, it's going to be incredibly difficult to incentivize behavior change, particularly when it comes to managing encounters, enforcing code of conduct, and reducing the number of vessels that are trying to crowd and present one whale shark to their clients. So some of the core findings were really that the strong reliance on income from tourism regarding whale sharks is causing a violation of code of conduct. Many tourism operators indicated that if they wait for boats to leave a whale shark, they're not going to be able to show a whale shark to their clients, which ultimately means that they might be losing income. Another core finding really is the vulnerability of the whale sharks in Sampa to human pressure resulting from this tourism, but also resulting in declined encounters. And because we don't know where the whale sharks are going, it's currently very difficult to interpret how this decline in encounters or the presence of the sharks in Sampa is impacting their health, their feeding behavior, and their ability to thermoregulate, because we don't really know where they're going. We haven't had any sightings anywhere else. And also the fisheries, which was a very unexpected aspect that came out in this thesis research, is that there's still this mostly hidden ongoing conflict between the tourism industry and the fishing industry regarding sharks, and the fact that sharks are still quite a challenging topic to be addressed. The most important insight that I want to highlight here is that the health of the Sampa's whale shark population and its continued presence really depends on the tourism industry, on the operators. But also, looking back, the operator's income and abilities to sustain the industry depends on the health of the whale sharks. And so we have this feedback loop where often one element gets missed. And really, it becomes evident that whale shark conservation in Sampa isn't just a conservation question, it's actually an economic and development question. And ultimately, the question is, if whale sharks continue to reduce their presence in Sampa, what does that mean for the tourism industry? And what does that mean for the operators that are basing their income on the presence of these gentle giants? So next step for us will be, before publication, will be to test the relationship between the declining whale shark encounters against environmental variables like sea surface temperature, lunar radiation, chlorophyll, light pollution, to rule out that environmental factors are driving this rapid decline. There's been a lot of amazing work done already showing that there's statistical significance between these factors and obviously the whale shark presence. So we're really looking for some abnormalities in these environmental factors that could potentially also explain the rapid decline. I'll also be heading back in the field to conduct more interviews with tourist operators, fishermen, and to really expand the social side of this research more. And lastly, we're going to attempt, as suggested from my supervisor, to develop some sort of mathematical model and field test to examine if there's such a thing as a carrying capacity. If we can determine if there's a maximum number of tourists and boats whale sharks can sustain before they start showing evasive behavior and avoiding their presence in Sampa. So lots of exciting things to be done. And I hope I've been able to give you a little bit of a snippet into this thesis. This was not a full presentation of all the findings, but just some really core elements that crystallized in the data analysis. Thank you.